amongst the new releases, the one getting most poster space is the new Pixar movie had Sigourney Weaver on Friday. This is Mark's thought on Wall-E.
Well, let's begin with that pronunciation, because it is one of those titles when you can't say Wall-E, you have to say Wall-E. You know, you do, because it's...
Once you've seen it, you do.
No, but that's it. I mean, even before I'd seen it, people were saying to me, have you seen Wall-E? People can't just say, have you seen Wall-E? Because that's what, Wall-E is the guy with the big nose who puts his, nose over a wall. Wall-E was here.
Where's Wall-E?
Where's Wall-E? Exactly.
He's the guy in red striped top.
So the story is... the whole of the Earth has been left behind by human people because we have polluted it so badly that it has just become a completely smog-ridden dump. And all life appears to have been abandoned. Everyone's gone up into space and they're all now living in spaceships.
It's a bit like Canvey Island, really. That's what's left.
That's a terrible thing to say about Canvey Island. Dr. Feelgood from Canvey Island.
Oh, I take it back then.
Yeah, exactly. All that we have on the surface of the Earth is a little robot called Wall-E, which is it's waste and something is a waste disposal robot. And what he's doing is he's just going around picking up waste, turning it into a little cuboid box, and then effectively building skyscrapers of waste out of it. And as you can imagine, that being the scenario, there's not much dialogue in the early part of the film. In fact, we had a choice of 2 clips. This is the one we went for, and this is about as dialogue heavy as it gets.
Wow.
And that's it, really, isn't it? I mean, the whole first section of the movie...
The first section, yeah.
The words, now later on, when they get into space, you do start having human people talking, but of course they aren't as interesting as Wall-E. Now, I want to be quite clear about this. There has been a lot of discussion amongst critical circles about whether or not Wall-E is properly a kids' film. As you probably know, when it opened in America, it opened to rave reviews. I mean, people literally saying it's the first contender for best film for 2009. It's kind of kicking off the Oscar season. So you're not talking about best animated film, you're talking about a contender for best film. Also, a number of the critics who were absolutely raving about it talked about how dark it is. The director has said that the key tone of his original treatment was loneliness. The idea of this lonely little robot alone on this planet, just doing this thing. In fact, one of the original taglines was, after years of doing what he does, and he's about to discover what he's for. But there's this sense of just years and years of this little robot doing what he does very quietly. And then he goes back home, and he's got this funny little world that he lives in which he's got an old videotape of Hello Dolly with Michael Crawford. And because I feel very strongly about Hello Dolly anyway, partly because my brother was in a production of it about 2 years ago, so I can't think of it without sort of bursting into tears anyway. But
but you cry and everything.
No, I know, but it's it is.
Was your brother playing the role of Michael Crawford?
He was playing the Walter Matthau role, the other guy, the old curmudgeon, and of course,
kind of in the kind of DNA.
What do you expect? Yeah. So for the first part of it, this is what you get. Now, it's clear to me that what that is Silent Running. Okay, have you seen Silent Running?
No.
But you know how I feel about Silent Running?
Yes.
Okay.
You feel very passionately about it.
I do.
One of the great movies ever.
Science fiction film from the early 1970s, directed by Doug Trumbull, who did the special effects on 2001. And Trumbull specifically said that he had made Silent Running in response to the lack of humanity of 2001, that he wanted to make a film that actually had sentimentality in it. And the story in that is there's Brewster. All the Earth is completely polluted. There's no vegetation anymore. And the only remaining forests are up in geodesic domes that are wandering around the cosmos, being looked after by little walking robots. And at the very beginning, the spaceships get called back and they all have to be destroyed. There's only one left, and Bruce Dern is on his own with these little walking robots. And in the end, it ends up with a little walking robot tending to a plant. And it clearly looms large in the back of Wall-E. Now, the question is whether or not a kids' audience would get that. Now, I saw Silent Running when I think I must have been 9. And I loved it. I mean, it broke my heart, and I really, really was upset by it. But I thought it was absolutely wonderful. And we should say right away, if people are going to take their kids to see Wall-E, Wall-E is not doesn't have a downbeat, heartbreaking, melancholy ending. I mean, it does send you out with a big bang and a crash, and it's fine. It doesn't, it ends not with a whimper but a bang, doesn't it?
Well, it finishes with a positive kick.
Exactly, it finishes with a positive kick. Unlike Silent Running, which literally finishes with the little robot on his own drifting off.
Don't spoil it.
No, Silent Running.
Don't spoil it. I haven't caught up with it yet.
Okay, it's been out for like 35 years.
Still a spoiler.
Okay, fine. So
What happens in... Oh, go on then.
Well, no, I'm not going to tell you what happens in the end of WALL-E. All I'm saying is because people do want to know if they take their kids to see movies that people talk about being dark, they want to know whether the kids are going to come out happy or sad. I think it is important to say your kids will come out of it happy. It is rated U for, and I love this, rated U because it contains very mild threat and violence.
Very mild.
It's not just mild threat and violence, but it's very mild threat and violence. Okay, so firstly, parents, be reassured your kids aren't going to come out of it in tears. The question is whether your kids will get bored during that first period in which it is essentially the loneliness of the little robot that, as you pointed out in posters, to some extent evokes Short Circuit and little, Lost Robots, but I think much closer to E.T. There is a lot of E.T. in WALL-E.
Is that the eyes?
It's the eyes partly, because the thing about E.T. was he had the great big, that big wide-eyed head, right? Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what WALL-E has, and all the expression is in the up and down movement of those mechanical eyes, but it's also to do with the voice. I mean, it's interesting that WALL-E ends on E, and when people say there's all that stuff about E.T. phone home, Deborah Winger, incidentally, Officer and Gentleman, she went from, being whisked off by Richard Gere to going, phone home, E.T. There, fine, okay. There is clearly an oral echo. Don't look at me like I'm mad.
No, it's just, I love it when you do voices.
No, but
and accents.
Yeah, okay.
And dancing.
Then fine.
It's great.
But you do think, don't you, that there is some E.T. in WALL-E? I'm not just making this up.
No, certainly. It's the way it looks.
Great,
a little
fine.
bit of that.
Big head, funny little squat body, the thing of the extendable neck, all that stuff. My feeling is this. I think that kids are ready for darker and more challenging material than a lot of people think they are ready for. And I think that kids will get WALL-E. And you look at the American box office, it has already, I think it's done something like 160 million, which if anyone's underperforming at 160 million in the US alone in the first 3 weeks, then, that means that basically we're into the realms of astroeconomics, because 160 million is an enormous amount of money. There has been some people have said that they've been at screenings in which kids have got bored at the beginning. I think maybe the very young children who like a lot of knockabout slapstick may find little bits of it slightly slow, but there's plenty of Laurel and Hardy style knockabout slapstick. There's plenty of when he's picking up the rubbish and he picks up the fire extinguisher and he gets blown out of the thing. It's lots of things, dang, bang, crap, but it is very sentimental. But it's very sentimental in a way which really, really appealed to me. And I sat there thinking it's just a very well-made, proper 1970s dystopian science fiction film. When they get out into space, it kind of changes gear slightly. And then it becomes, it's an eco-friendly film. It's about how we need to get up and do more exercise and we've all abandoned the world and isn't that terrible and we all need to wake up, which very much reminds me of the speech that Bruce Dern gives in Silent Running, in which he says, the problem is everywhere you go on the Earth, it's 72 degrees. And it's interesting that turns up in WALL-E. So clearly a debt is owed to Silent Running by this film. It's kind of acknowledging it. But all the stuff in outer space about the humans just floating around in space on hover chairs and they're all obese and their bones have started to wither because they've been out in zero gravity for such a long time is perhaps slightly less successful. Personally, I could have just had the whole film about WALL-E wandering around on his own on the lonely, desolated planet.
That would have sort of slightly drifted away from it being a nice, happy kids film, though, at that point.
It would have done, and I think that it actually what they've done is balanced it beautifully in saying, okay, Mark, here's your, your dystopian stuff and your misery and your sadness, and here's the stuff that's actually going to get the rest of the audience in. But I do think it's really good.
Peter in Edinburgh.
Did you like it?
I did. Yeah, no, absolutely, I did like it. But I just think no, I'm not reserved. I think it's very good. I just don't think it's Toy Story 2. I don't think kids will go, or even adults will go and say, I have never seen anything like that before.
No, I would agree that it's not Toy Story 2. In that Toy Story 2 is The Godfather 2, and I think we're both agreeing that it is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Toy Story and Toy Story 2 are as near to perfect as it's possible for films to be, like David Cronenberg's Crash. But in the case of WALL-E, there are things that you could legitimately say, well, it's long and slow and all that sort of thing. But I still think it has a sense of wonderment. I think that the design in it is absolutely beautiful, and I was touched by it. I was genuinely touched by it, and it's amazing how much Pixar are very good at this, but how much they get out of something which can't smile and can't speak. How much sense of pathos they get out of that little robot.